Welcome to Uncaged. Today, we are fortunate to have Naheed Chowdhry on the show. With Naheed, we could talk about a million things, but we're going to talk about really an important topic in business today: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Naheed has an extensive corporate background. She's also ventured into establishing her own business. Really focused on that topic of gender equity in the workplace, and certainly handling some of the topics that have been very, very pertinent over the last couple of years in terms of shifting and driving diversity, equity, and inclusion, and really showing how that actually has a positive impact across all aspects of the business, as well as transforming them for today and for the future. And so we'll talk a lot about that today and the work that Naheed is doing. But before we get there, Naheed, tell us a little bit about you and your career.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ben. So I was born and brought up in Pakistan, but after that, I've had the privilege of living and working across Asia, Australia, Europe, and the Middle East and Africa. And what's driven me in each region, I've had the honor of working with companies like Unilever and Hershey's and Mondelez, so giants, and I've learned a lot about strategic leadership, business development, and fostering workplace cultures that are really inclusive. What drives me is a mix, this passion for a mix of commercial growth and positive change. Along with my professional pursuits, I'm also a best-selling author. I have 4 wonderful children, really blessed, and I'm a certified coach. And I was also lucky enough to interact with a number of governments as part of my own organization that I've established, my consulting business, and served in that capacity on the Gender Council of the UAE, and I'm also a member of the UN Task Force for Women. Very committed to driving innovation and social impact. And really, it's all about that sweet spot of finding what works for business and what works for society.
So Naheed, so many things we could obviously delve into there, but tell me a little bit of some of the things that you're involved in right now around the gender equity space.
Sure. So there are 2 areas here, and the first one, and which I'm really excited about because it's coming to a close, is the book I'm working on. It's called The Hourglass Effect, and it explores how women often face career hurdles when they become caregivers. That is really the point at which the gap happens, and equity in career growth is generally out of reach. Ageism also typically affects around the age of 40, and this often leads women to leave their corporate jobs, and therefore that drain from the corporate pipeline goes into the entrepreneurship pool. So many women then start their own businesses. They use that incredible set of skills and determination to support their families. In fact, if you take a look at data, and all that I share with you is based on research that we've done over the years. It was not a pattern we were looking for, but as we did it across countries, we found, there's something that comes out, whether it's a developing market or a developed market, there are some commonalities. And this drain from the corporate pipeline and then population of the entrepreneurship pool showed up very clearly. And we also found that successful entrepreneurs often start around the same age that women leave their jobs. So lots of dots that we've connected there. So that's one. I'm looking forward to having that out by the end of this year.
I think a lot about that, where, you look at the top business schools today, and, sometimes more than 50% of the class are women. Women tend to do better on tests, tend to be really, really strong, applicants. And so they're well positioned, but you're absolutely right. We still see that disappearance of a lot of women, right around that kind of late 30s, 40s moment. In some ways, it's heartening for me to hear that they're becoming entrepreneurs. So that's actually kind of exciting in a way. And I'm actually thinking there may be something really big there. So it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, and that entrepreneurship brings its own set of challenges for them, right? We've all heard about the funding issues they have, etc. But there's this incredible, I think the grit that drives them to succeed there is what eventually does help them. And the second area that I'm committed, and it's kind of it's the sweet spot. So after having spent all my life in commercial leadership and businesses and driving P&Ls, I found that this is an area that's the sweet spot. So
Hmm.
it's what's called the stakeholder value concept. So not shareholder value, we all deliver to shareholders, but for organizations, and adopting the stakeholder value concept is something that I think is that I'm really committed to. And what it is it's about balancing talent retention and diversity efforts with shareholder value. So you make it work. It's not, you don't just tick a box. You don't just talk fluff. You make it work so that it actually
Hmm.
shows up in shareholder value. And how it shows up is through more innovation, flexible
Mm.
teams, better customer service, quick solution orientedness. And at the end of the day, what really pulls it all together is that when you're working for an organization like this that not only delivers on shareholder value, but is open to ideas, it brings in diversity to drive it. It's a purpose driven approach and it benefits both employees and the organization. The challenge here, of course, comes that while leadership can play a role,
Mm.
nothing will change unless middle management embraces this mindset. So it will only go mainstream when that happens.
I love that. I think you're really onto something, and I was smiling to myself here because I was thinking, wow, I bet Naheed's gonna have some interesting thoughts on this on a topic that I want to bring up. I've noticed over the last couple of weeks that several companies are getting quite aggressive in terms of pushing people back to the office. I'm sure you've seen all these stories, whether it be Jamie Dimon at Chase, JP Morgan, all these banks, but it's really happening all over the place. And I read a study saying that women are, in particular, actually are very reluctant, because the flexibility that the kind of this hybrid model has offered has been extremely positive for them. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it has. And I think there is a solution. Um, First of all, I think it is important to be back at work, at
Yeah.
least part-time,
Yeah.
because when you're seen and heard, you're promoted.
Yes.
If you're completely remote and everyone else is not, you lose out. So I think it's critical. And then as women who are caregivers, so again, that fundamental word of caregivers comes in. If there is somebody to look after the family or the children or the dependents, it works.
Hmm.
But if there isn't anybody, or that care is unaffordable, or that care is unavailable, that's where the hesitation kicks in. And for a lot, and that's also been in the news a lot. So the caregiving policies or the funding of this, and that is the single biggest stumbling block, in my view, uh,
Mm.
for women who may be very reluctant to return to work. You will find it's primarily caregivers rather than
Yeah.
in a different life stage. And that's
Yeah.
the single biggest stumbling block.
Yeah, it's a really key point. I mean, Naheed, I would say that the summer of COVID, the summer of social justice, really in 2020, was an interesting moment for the corporate world. Certainly, everyone was embracing overnight the topic of diversity, equity, inclusion. It seemed that companies that had never had a policy suddenly had a policy, and suddenly we're moving forward. Tell me where we've gone for the last 4 years. Are we moving forward? Are you excited? Are you happy with the progress, or what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, multiple factors. So what COVID also did was that, and this again was in the news. We found that more senior women were leaving their jobs because they were footing the burden of home care as well as caregiving as well as their work. So it isn't
Mm.
that if there were two people in the house or there were partners in the house, the work would be equally divided. It doesn't work that way, and we've actually found that more senior women were leaving their roles at the time of COVID because they just couldn't balance both areas. So surprise, surprise, that happened. Having
Yeah.
said that, obviously the flexibility that it afforded is brilliant. Coming back, I think if that single stumbling block that I mentioned could be addressed to some degree, it would work.
Hmm.
I think what it's done is I don't think the world is going to go back. However much organizations may want us to go back to the old ways, it's just behaviors and attitudes change over 3 to 5 years, right? This has been many years. Behaviors
Yeah.
have, attitudes have changed, mindsets have changed, so it'll
Yeah.
never go back. And in that sense, it's definitely better being a caregiving woman now than it was pre-2020. However, the challenges still remain, but perhaps there's more openness to them. What I do find also is that, and what, in my opinion, I have observed in the corporate life is that as soon as there is an economic crunch, the most dispensable are the ones who get to go. So that will include policies where you're getting perks or fringes when money needs to be created at the bottom line, and
Hmm.
that if you're in an prolonged economic recession,
Hmm.
uh, then that can impact this particular topic as well.
I liked your point, Naheed. I mean, certainly, it's really going to be a balancing act because you're absolutely right. If you're not in the office, you're invisible. However, I would really argue that some of the things that I'm hearing cited now by folks saying that people need to pour back into the office, i.e., like efficiency and things like that, I just don't buy it. I don't buy it because I just haven't seen it myself. Now, I'm not exactly sure how people commuting 1 to 2 to 3 hours a day is somehow more efficient, you know, in terms of the way that they work and live. But, that we'll leave that topic for another day. I mean, clearly you've had an incredible set of experiences throughout your career, and you're working right now passionately in this area of DEI, gender equity, and it's an area that you're writing, obviously publishing in, and it's clearly an important factor for you. Tell me a little bit about what drives that passion for you.
Yeah, sure. It's obviously it's something that's as a mother
Hmm.
that I've personally experienced and seen, so and been there. So you go from being a real high flyer in a particular life stage to getting labeled as a caregiver, and this is not a unique phenomenon. It happens to the vast majority of working mothers, and that being one of them, and I've been more fortunate than most has made me realize that this is an area where the majority is silent, and that irks me. So, you know how in generations they say X is the silent majority, Gen X is the silent majority,
Mm,
the quiet Y talks, Z talks.
yeah.
But in this case, working mothers, because they often prioritize acceptance over fighting for fairness at work, because they're looking for financial stability, and they fear that speaking up will may destabilize things for them. This actually, it's a chicken and egg story. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It leads them to be overlooked and leave their jobs, but they have incredible valuable experience and training and expertise, and I
Yeah.
think it's really important. It's a passion for me to get management to see this and understand this, because the one area that is unique to them is exceptional stakeholder management skills. I mean, you never underestimate a mother's people management qualities or stress management qualities because the stakes are too high for her to lose. Now, imagine
Yeah.
you have a team at work, somebody leaves your team at work, and you can replace them. It's a loss, it's a regretted loss, but you can replace them. But here, there is no question of a regretted loss. You won't hear the last of it for the rest of your life. So, and that stress management. Now, think bringing that set of skills in addition to the expertise and training that the organization has helped them develop to the corporate table.
Hmm.
Talk about enhanced crisis management, you talk about level headedness in a time of stress, you talk about collaboration, you talk about innovation, solution orientedness, solutions to any problems, reverse engineering solutions, and focusing on goals, cutting out the noise, focusing. Ultimately, all of these go into accelerating business growth. And when you also layer on top of that the facts, studies have found that companies with 50% of women in senior leadership have a 10% higher cash flow return on investment. There's a reason for that. That life stage that starts to hit at mid senior and senior leadership is the life stage where women are typically caregivers.
Hmm.
And they bring this skill set. So if you start to join the dots and the pattern, you'll find that they're a huge benefit.
Yeah, I
So
mean, look, my perspective on it is we have a long, long list of challenges in our working world and our world in general. We need the best brains. I don't care where they come from, thinking about these challenges and moving things forward. So, Naheed, it's amazing to hear the work that you're doing. But tell me a little bit about 2024. What's on the docket for you this year and in general on this topic that we're going through?
yeah. On my priority is for 2024 is, as I said, getting my book out there and then starting the conversations around it. Because the single biggest area, in my view, is so no wrong, no right, just my view is acknowledgement. Because there is awareness,
Hmm.
everybody's aware that DEI is a good thing, it should be done, etc. But and in this particular case, of course, women should get the same rights as their counterparts. But it's acknowledgement, because acknowledgement is, okay, there may be an issue in my organization. Awareness is there's an issue, probably not in my organization, but there's an issue globally. We have to do something. We have to tick a box.
Hmm.
Acknowledgement is there's an issue in the organization, and also potentially the absence of an execution plan. So acknowledgement means, yeah, we've got awareness. We know this is a problem. It's probably a problem here. Now, how do we make sure it actually gets addressed? In my view, I think it's great to see more and more um, noise being created around this, more talk around this area. I sometimes worry that the woke agenda will eclipse it, because this has
Hmm.
to be an objective. This has to be an objective discussion. Ultimately, it's about driving business value. You can't have subjectivity. You can't have over emotion here. There has to be transparency and objectivity, and that is my worry, that that'll continue to eclipse this topic. But acknowledging it is um, something that I hope will change. That the last one is to make it less fluffy. So it always
Hmm.
talks. I mean, whenever I've gone into an organization to start, I can feel it. I tense up, and I know somewhere somebody in the audience is rolling their eyes heavenwards, and oh God, here we go again. And I think what would
Hmm.
be amazing is if they could understand the why. So it's not to tick a box. The why ultimately is the acceleration of business growth, and this works for everybody. And I hope that's what we'll see more of, or that kind of thinking in 2024.
I agree. I think acknowledgement is clearly a start. I kind of see that we're on a bit of a spectrum really with companies. I'm noticing that there are some really, really interesting models that are coming into play here to kind of put DEI thinking at the center of businesses. There also obviously are more kind of maybe conservative or traditional businesses that are siloing the activity, sometimes almost maybe just giving it a bit of lip service. And so I kind of feel like whereas maybe we had a more limited spectrum of more conservative activities, we now have some real rock star examples. I've been on some calls with businesses, some in the CPG space, in the fashion industry and retail, that have really placed this right at the heart of their operations, all the way through to like where how the products are manufactured, and all the way through to the way things get priced on the floor. It's fascinating to see how it's impacted every decision. And so I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. I'm an optimist here, Naheed, and I think that your book will be a great movement for all of us to push this forward. Naheed, it's been great to have you on the show today. If someone wanted to reach you, where's the best place to find you?
Well, they can reach me at my email. It's Naheed at iwill.global. That's Naheed at iwill.global. And I'd be happy to chat further and discuss any topics or any thoughts.
Excellent. Well, everyone, keep your eyes peeled for Naheed's book that'll be coming out later this year. We've been talking about a lot of topics today: gender equity, where diversity, equity, and inclusion is today, some of the challenges that still sit there, some of the things that need to get wrestled with. I think that one of the key points today was about caregiving and how we really need to spend a bit more time on how to rethink that and restructure that for enterprises to actually embrace a true DE&I strategy. So I really, really like that thought, Naheed. And I look forward to having you back when your book comes out. So I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you for having me today, Brent.